Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Beauty and Brains, a podcast from First Girls for First Girls. I'm Shivani, your host from 1441 Don't Blink, and today I'm here with Hester. Hester, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, so my name's Hester. I was part of the first program since 2007, so we're reaching 19, almost 20 years now. I started as an FLL student, did that for 3 years, and then joined my FRC team in 2016 as a high school senior. After that, kind of just went through the entire volunteering program. Started out volunteering in 2012 for a lot of the FLL programs around my area and started out helping with FRC regionals once I graduated high school, was an alumni volunteer mentor, and continued with the FRC volunteering as well. Also helped out start some off seasons while I was still living in the States and have continued that volunteering program here in Australia as well.
Yeah, definitely. And can you walk us through like your journey in first within your FLL team that you mentioned or FRC and or not just in first, maybe in STEM in general, how you got into STEM?
Absolutely. So how I got into STEM in general was through first. It was through FLL. I think I always had a bit of an interest in the STEM areas, but nothing was really solidified until I got to experience FLL for myself. So I was part of a Girl Scouts FLL team. It was formed with some of my friends and I, and we just went for it because we thought it was cool and fun. Um, After that, that kind of drove my passion for engineering, and specifically mechanical engineering, and everything I've done since then has prepared me for my career to become an engineer.
Yeah,
In terms of
definitely.
FRC, sorry, I'm just gonna give
No,
a bit
it's
tidbit
okay.
on the FRC team.
Yeah.
In terms of FRC, that was part of my school. That was part of, actually not my school. I joined my school's team, but then switched to a different school just because I had more friends there. It would be more fun.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a really valuable experience for me, formed some of my closest friends from there.
Yeah, definitely. And like kind of how did you find out about FRC within your school and, decided that you want to join?
Well, because I had done FLL earlier and previously as a young child, that had always been on my mind. I didn't do FTC just because VEX was the offering at my high school. Um, so n keeping my eye out for any first programs was something that I'd always done, and FRC was, it's a very large community out in the West Coast. So kind of just was really lucky that my school had it there and that some of my friends' schools had it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of what made you want to stay in first even after graduating?
It's honestly the community, the people, the vibes, and just the passion for it, right? It's been such a large part of my life. Started in 2006, 2007. I really didn't know much else outside of that in terms of things to drive me towards my passion of engineering and STEM. So I just love the community that came from that. Love the friends I made along the way. Love the experiences. For us, it's a very unique program where you would get that central collaboration between the technical expertise and your soft skill development as well. And I know it's a lot of cliches that we talk about in terms of getting to be at the center of both, but I think it really is true and it really helped me a lot and I really valued that.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that now you are in Australia and you're volunteering. So how is that volunteer experience different than you as a student versus you as a mentor and now being a volunteer?
Absolutely. Even before I moved to Australia, I was already volunteering a lot in the States, but I would say just being a volunteer, you understand how much time goes into it that you don't realize as a student. As a student, you're so focused on your own robot, your own team, your awards, your performance. And you don't realize the scale of effort and time and money being poured into the event to make sure that you as a student have a great team experience. Once you start volunteering, even as just like a field resetter, you then realize how much thinking goes into it, how much planning goes into it, and all of the other volunteers around you, how much effort it takes to gather all of that. To put for everyone to put in that time to want to come and help you guys out as a student, make sure that you guys are doing great. And so I think that's the biggest mindset change that has happened since then. But now, as I've been volunteering for almost 15 years now, I think it's been y- there's always new things coming to light, and there's always things that you're learning about the volunteer experience and about the program itself.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of with that mindset change, how about like are there any like challenges or experiences that you had to overcome transitioning from being a student to being a volunteer?
I wouldn't say there were any challenges during the transition, but I would say there's definitely some more challenges now where I'm learning to balance the team experience versus the event experience. There's a lot of some teams will want more matches or will want more time in between cycles and in between matches so they can work on their robot. But when you have a strict schedule, when the venue is only allowing you to stay till so late, when you have to worry about how late are the volunteers going to be staying, that's something that you have to consider as well. And it's a really interesting jigsaw puzzle that you're playing there to make sure you're keeping everyone happy.
Yeah. And I don't know if you mentioned, but do you FTAA at events?
Yeah, so I have been FTAAing for a while, and last weekend, actually during the week two Australian Southern Cross Regional, I had been nominated as the FTA trainee. So
Yeah.
that's been going through quite well. And again, all of that challenges and mindset and experiences that's coming from, now you're looking at the event from a whole perspective, and what you need to make sure, like, in terms of the team experience, they paid registration for this. So what's the best way they can get out of it, but also making sure that you're maintaining the volunteer experience as well so that you will have future volunteers that will come back and support your event, and also maintaining the spectator experience so that you're making sure you're putting on a show for everyone, because it is a competition for the students, but it's also a show to make sure to keep things, interesting and keep the support from our sponsors coming.
Yeah, definitely. And like what does your role like as an FDA involve? And like maybe what do you enjoy most about it? And you mentioned volunteering in general. Maybe what's one of your favorite volunteering roles at a event or competition?
So FTA and FTAAing both involve a lot of that soft skills that we mentioned that you learned during FLL, right? You need to be able to understand the teams where they're coming from in terms of their technical hardships, if they're in trouble or something, but you also need to understand how to maintain that calm presence. So while the students are in a panicked mode, you can help walk them through it. And that's where that training comes from. It's really a leadership role, I would say. Both require some sort of technical knowledge, but I would say it's definitely a leadership role to help calm the students while they're driving or if their robot's breaking down, and give them that bit of breathing room to say, hey, like it'll be fine. Like we're here to help. We're here to support you guys, right? The event is not. We're not just not going to leave you out to dry. There are a lot of technical support around. We have our robot inspectors, our CSAs. We have other teams as well. They're all here to help you.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe like what's something that you learned through this experience as a volunteer that you would have never learned as a student?
Oh, that's a good one. I think. I think it's really a really big piece is probably communication. Being able to understand that while in high intensity situations, a lot of communication is very short and blunt or not explained because things just need to get done, and that it's not something you should take personally, but it's something that just needs to happen in order to keep the event moving. And the best communication, and I think when we're younger, a lot of times we think the best communication might be sugar-coated or might be prefaced with something a bit nicer. But in situations like that, it's just saying it straight out, and to just take that at face value, but not take it to heart.
Yeah, definitely. And um with that kind of how has like first like impacted your life now? Maybe how has it shifted your perspective on what you wanted to do as a student versus what you're doing now and like stuff like that?
So I mentioned earlier that, I decided to become an engineer from the time I did FLL, and that everything I had done, up to now has steered my career towards becoming an engineer. So I graduated with a mechatronics engineering degree. But in terms of what I'm actually doing now, I am working in the software engineering space. So I'm not a developer, but I am working towards, I'm on a product management career path, I guess. Not completely fully a product manager yet, but working towards that. And that's sort of the path. Again, that's where the crossroads of technical and soft skills come into play, where you're now understanding the larger vision, you're doing problem identification of what your product is going to be, and you're narrowing that down into small, understandable requirements for your developers. That's kind of what first through the many years of being in FLL and just being in the program and knowing the core values and understanding what they're trying to teach us on both the technical and soft skills front. All of that has come into, one full circle for me, pretty much. And that's kind of what I'm doing with my job now.
Yeah, definitely. And I asked earlier, like, what is something that you learned that you wouldn't have learned as a student? Now, kind of contrary to that, what is something that you see a lot of students do that maybe you even did that you think is like looked over a little bit too much, maybe like an action towards volunteer members or kind of just anything like that?
Hmm. I think as a student, we yeah, I think it's we don't really understand the time and effort that volunteers are putting in. We rock up and they're just there, and we think, we're the ones paying so much money with registration to be here, we're the ones competing. And I do see a lot of times that there are not necessarily enough appreciation for the volunteers. And the volunteers that show up to events are usually the same ones over and over again after many years. And there is absolute recognition, but I have a very strong, there's a soft spot in my heart for volunteers, not just because I am one now, but I have been a volunteer coordinator for many events for quite a few years now. So I understand the struggle of getting volunteers to come into events. Um, and I think that's something that we never really realized as a student about how much effort it took to actually get the event, to make the event possible, right? Because the event would not be possible without the volunteers there.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of with that, like, how do you think First has done a good job of making sure that their volunteers are getting those opportunities, not necessarily opportunities, but like you mentioned, like recognition, like how do you think First has done with fostering a community for volunteers?
Yeah, I think Verse has done there is a lot of recognition that they have done out there, and they've provided a really good pathway of progression. I think that in itself is a way of recognition of recognizing your commitment and dedication as a volunteer and recognizing that you have put in the work and you're interested to learn more about the program, especially for alumni, right? A lot of us stick around just because we're really passionate for it. And that we did it as a student and we want to give back to the community. And that's what a lot of the volunteering blood runs off of, essentially wanting to give back to the community, because we understand how beneficial the program was to us as students. Now,
Mhm.
for those that weren't part of the program, it's a bit harder, because don't have that experience to know how great the program was. And that's where that recognition comes into play. And I think, with FIRST's promotion of STEM education, I think that in itself draws in of a lot of external volunteers, essentially, those outside of the program. And once they're there, they see how great it is, they see how happy the kids are, and I think that just really drives them to keep coming back. And in terms of, going back to the whole recognition aspect, you have your Volunteer of the Year award. You have, just the capability of being able to meet all these other people, and seeing to improve yourself, right? It's not just a you rock up, you do your job, and you go back home. You're talking to a lot of people. It is a network there for you. Something that I like to tell a lot of students or alumni is that you don't just come to volunteer just to volunteer. You get the chance to see things run behind the scenes, a better understanding for your team if you decide to become like a alumni mentor, how things are run and what the limits are essentially. But also it's a industry network for you. You
Mhm.
have so many amazing people, you have so many alumni, so many industry professionals as volunteers, right? We're all working full-time jobs, and it is a great industry network for you to tap into.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of going off of what you said, in an event with so many volunteers, obviously, especially with a competition at the scale as FRC, how many do you think what's like the split in between volunteers who just like come in versus volunteers who are alumni? And like, is there, in your opinion, like any difference that you see in between those volunteers as a volunteer coordinator?
I think the split is, those who just come in probably, I would say 10%, and then
Hmm.
everyone else comes in regularly. Um, the difference is the passion, I would say, because being in the program, you develop that passion for it. Um, but then for those that do show up, right, I think that it's a bit more of an excitement for them. Not saying that those who show up every year aren't excited to be there, but there is a bit of a difference in terms of the way you talk to them, I guess. You can see when you're talking to someone else that has been in the program, there is there is just like a sort of sparkle in their tone and in their eyes when they talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. And, talking a little bit more on that like sparkle and that tone, what motivates you specifically to continue giving back to First?
It's just giving back to the community. It's
Yeah.
my passion for the program. I think the answer is as simple as that. But also I've done it for more than two-thirds of my life. I've been in the program for more than two-thirds of my life. I don't really know how to do anything else at this point.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really just fostering that community for the students because I know how great it was for me, how beneficial it was for me, not just from a technical standpoint, but again from that community, soft skills, and I think really on the community part. So I want to make sure the students now have that same opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And like now like a little bit more on the fun side, like do you have like a really funny story as a volunteer? Because like I know like at competition, like my team, we sometimes we have funny interactions with the volunteers.
I honestly don't remember much of what happens at events. It kind of just all goes by at a blur for me at this point. Um, Yeah, I don't think I can afford, unfortunately answer your question at this point. There will definitely be a funny story, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And maybe instead of just like a story specifically, but maybe something that like a kid will do that kind of makes you sit back and chuckle for a second.
Yes, I do have that. So being an FTA and an FTAA, one of the rules is to make sure that the driver stations and the teams and the robots can connect to the field.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of times students will either forget a certain step, a very basic step, and not even realize. And I think a lot of times it's either, turning your robot on or even just like plug in your laptop, your driver station laptop. And they'll show me a lot of times I'll go up and be like, have you guys set up? And they'll show me their driver station is open. They'll show me everything is open, but they haven't actually connected to the laptop. They're like, yeah, we're ready. We're still ready. And I'm like, okay, you're missing the very first step.
Yeah.
And I think the recurrence, like when I'm just listing it out like that, I think it's not that funny. But when you see it so many times, um, whenever that happens, it does give me a little bit of a chuckle. I'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
sometimes they just need a checklist, or like I don't know what goes through these students' brains
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, just like getting caught up in the moment a little bit, a little too excited.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
And what advice would you give to girls like just starting out in STEM or just trying to get involved in first?
Don't be afraid to step on people's toes. I think that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. As girls, as women, as females, a lot of times we're very shy or nervous, or have more of a people-pleasing tendency. And I know these are all stereotypes, but I think they're stereotypes for a reason, because the large general population of that has proven it to be true. But when you want to go into a career that's very much male-dominated or very high intensity, very fast-paced, you have to put yourself forward. You have to set up your own reputation to be someone that's not afraid.
Yeah.
And I think that's not something you should ease into doing. That is something that you should just do.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And, kind of with that, like, do you have any like, soft skills or like tips within that to try to like for girls who are trying to be the most confident person in the room, although they might not be the smartest or the loudest?
I think for me, something that's happened to me recently actually is when I started working. Um, it was a new environment, right? Didn't know anyone there. So I decided to just completely change the type of person, like my personality essentially. And instead of being someone that was a people pleaser, someone that was always worried about what the question or what the answer to my question would be and stressing out about a lot of things, stressing out about things out of my control. I just told myself that I was going to stop doing that. And one of the things that, helped me set up that context for my colleagues is the first thing I told my manager was, I'm a very blunt person. I will keep asking questions until to push the limit. I will keep asking for things I want, not necessarily I need. I will keep asking for things I want until you say no, and I will keep pushing until you say no. You are more than welcome to say no. I won't take it personally. But if I don't ask those questions, I will never know the limit. I will never know the boundaries, and I will never know the answer to that.
Mhm.
And so those were some of the first things I told my manager. And that's sort of the context I set, and that's the person that I walked into the office being. And then you just don't have to worry about, you know, oh, is this question going to go okay? Because I've already set that context in terms of I'm just going to keep pushing until you tell me no.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of moving up from like girls just trying to get in first, how about, maybe girls or just people in general trying to stay like involved after they graduate? Any tips for that?
Definitely keep in contact with your team members. Keep in contact with other alumni that you meet from teams as well. There is a large alumni network across the US and across the world. And keep volunteering. You'll meet so many great people there. You'll meet so many friends. Again, some of my closest friends are from people I met on the team. And even though we don't necessarily talk day to day anymore. Like we're all busy with our own lives. I'm living in a different time zone. But whenever I go back, it's always such a pleasure to see them, and I have the greatest fun with them. And they're
Mhm.
always there to support me, just by texting with each other every so often. And for events as well, if I have any questions, like I just shoot them a message, and they're always more than happy to help out. And so I
Yeah.
think just tap into that network, right? Just keep in contact with those people, or even if you haven't kept in contact, just reach out to anyone, right? Reach out to whoever is in the alumni network. Everyone, like we've all been through the same thing. It's a really easy point for us to bond over, and we all have a very similar mindset, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And my last question, because unfortunately we are running out of time, is maybe like what's one of your favorite like things or happenings that happened as you were a student?
Ooh, definitely the night before bag and tag. So when I was still a student, we still had something called bag and tag, which is at week 6 of build, we had to bag up our robot and put a tag around it, and we couldn't touch it until we opened it at the regional.
Mhm.
One of my favorite things would have been that night, because everyone was just in a frantic push to get it all done. But we were all just it was crazy and chaos, but I think that's when everything was over, it was the biggest relief, and we were so happy with each other, for each other, and for the robot as well.
Yeah, definitely. So unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I just want to say thank you for coming on. I mean, your experiences are truly great, and I 100% agree when it comes to, just like trying to be the confident, most like kind of sometimes you have to be the loudest person in the room to get yourself heard. And I just want to thank you again for coming on. Like it was truly great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. And to the viewers, thank you so much for listening to today's episode in Medium Brains. I'm Shivani McComla, and hopefully I'll see you next Sunday. Thank you.